So having these ideas in mind, let's use npm and see how we can use it to download packages from the npm registry and keep track of what versions we're using and what are our dependencies. This is init package.json, and we'll also talk about something called nodemon as a great example that will also help us in our web development. For starters, let's find the package that we want to install. Now, we've already talked about Express. We'll be looking at that later. That's a bit big for our purposes right now. I'm going to install something called Moment, and I can find it on the npm registry at npmjs.com. It's a JavaScript library for manipulating and displaying dates. And we can see that it's heavily used. It has a link to the GitHub repo, and if you go over there, there's good documentation, and it's extremely popular. So let's suppose that I want to use Moment in my application. Well, before we install it, we want to set up my app so that it can keep track of the packages that I'm installing, the versions that I'm using, and that I could give it to another developer and they could easily also know which packages this app depends on. So to use that, we're going to use npm init. And all that is a command line feature. I'm sitting in the command line on the root of the folder of my app that I'm going to add this dependency to. And I say npm init. It might take just a second. And so it asks me for the name of my app, but I can't just put it in any format. It has to be URL friendly because this is potentially being pushed to npm itself. So I would say Node.js, let's call it -test-app. And it starts at version 1. Our description, I'll say Node.js test app. Entry point is what is the JavaScript file that Node will run. We may have multiple JavaScript files in different modules, but there's always one JavaScript file that's the entry point that we actually give to Node. And we've been making it app.js, so I'll just keep it that default. I'll ignore the test command, the get repository, the keywords, the author, the license. That's for things if I want to push this to npm, the registry itself. But I am just building this app. I'm not planning on giving it to npm for others to use. So is this okay? Yes. All right, so what did npm init do? Well, you see it created some JSON, all my settings, and it stored it in a file that it just created for me called package.json. Now I could have done this manually, but you can use npm init when you initially set up your new app to help you do it quickly. Now what's in here? Well, just a few things, the things that we entered. One thing of note is this scripts section. This is basically command line commands given a name. And I can say npm and then this name and run some scripts. So this is a way for me to quickly run some command line. So I could say npm test, and it says no tests specified. See? So it echoed, which just means print out to the console. So I could make different scripts and different names, and then npm uses package.json to say, oh, I know the name of that script and I'll run these commands. So that's one useful thing. But we're primarily interested in installing and using packages from the npm registry. So let's go grab Moment. We can already see that what I should do is npm install Moment. That's the unique package name. So I'll say npm install Moment. But I'll also do one other thing. And this is one of three things that we're going to see when it comes to npm install. I'll do a command line option, a parameter, save, 2 dashes, npm install moment, and then I put --save. I could also put the --save after the word install. But the idea is that npm, the program installed on my computer, will go to the npm registry, download the files that involve moment, which means I'll have a module because all the npm packages are structured as node modules. I'll have a module available to me now in my app that I can just go out and use the require function to grab. But I'd like to make sure that I note what I'm using in my app within this package.json file that npm looks at. So --save will save a reference in that package.json to this dependency. Watch. I hit enter, and it goes and downloads from the internet the package. Two things happen. One, a new folder is created automatically in my app called node_modules. This is standard. This is how we get external modules and pull them into Node. You'll see why in a moment, but in this node_modules folder, it downloaded moment, which is just a bunch of JavaScript files, and also has some documentation, source code, and other things. It's good to note that we're going to use this for Node, but a lot of people use npm even when they're not building a Node app, when they're just building a JavaScript app that runs in the browser with maybe a different server technology, because this is a great way to still keep track of what you're using in your app. So npm has grown not just to be for Node, but really for anyone doing anything in JavaScript on any platform. It's just a great way to manage things. So you might install Node on your computer, use it to download and use other code, but then end up actually using that code somewhere else, not in Node itself. It's very, very common. But not only was this downloaded, package.json was automatically updated for me with another entry, dependencies. And again, this is just JSON. This is just a text file. It said the name of the npm package, and then a character, a caret, and then a version. The caret is very important. This means that when we go to update to the next version, if a new version of Moment comes out, the caret means npm, it's okay to automatically update me to anything within this major release, the 2. So if 2.10.7 comes out, automatically update me. If a 2.11 comes out, automatically update me. But if it changes to a 3, don't update me. So in other words, any minor or patch change is okay. If you change this to a tilde, which sometimes you'll see, that means only give me patches. Don't give me even minor updates. So in that way, you can say how careful you want to be about updating to new versions of the packages that you're using. But the really great thing is that now I have this module available to me, and I have the dependency listed. That means I could go and give this package.json to someone else, and they know what npm packages are needed to run this app. So for example, if I just delete this node modules folder, this is often what you'll get as a developer. Whatever JS files are the app, and the package.json. To save a lot of space in our, let's say, our code repos, if you're using GitHub or some other form of storing your code, we don't store the folder node modules because we don't need to. We're not editing that content. That's packages being downloaded and used. We only ever need to push package.json into whatever repository of code we're using to share with other coders. And all you have to do is here in the command line say npm install by itself. That's it. And what that will do is we'll look at package.json and install all of the dependencies. So it looks and it sees Moment as a dependency, and it downloads it. And there it is again. And it would have done that for all dependencies that I have listed. So that's a terrific way to keep track of what do I need? What am I using in this app? Now, how do we get access to this module? Well, that's the great thing. It's a feature built in to the require function. Remember how we said that require has different capabilities as far as where it looks for things. If I do a / or a .. I'm saying a local module, something in my folder structure. If I just give it a name, it will first look for something in the node core. Is something there in the node core that matches? But if it doesn't, it does some other things. It looks other places. And one of the places it looks is for a node_modules folder in your app. And if there's a node_modules folder in your app, then it looks for that package there. It actually looks elsewhere as well, but we'll get there later. So because this is installed in the node_modules folder, the require function already knows to look there, and we can use this. So let's say console.log moment.format. And I'll go ahead and run this. There. And I have a date. And I can use moment for different things, like formatting and displaying dates. So I could say, if I wanted to, take the current date and show me it as the current day, comma, hour, and then whether it's AM or PM. So I'll save this, and I'll go ahead and run it. And there we go. So I'm recording this video on a Wednesday at 11 a.m. in my time zone. Make sense? So moment was available to me. And the require function reached out to the node modules folder since it couldn't find it elsewhere and found the moment module, that folder, and loaded the module, just like require always does. And when I look down into the module, well, it's just a whole bunch of JavaScript code. That's what everything in the NPM registry is. And I've registered this dependency in my package.json file, which I could then share or store so I could easily reinstall any dependencies.